listening to.
So I've just put the record on because I thought it's also nice, actually, that, you know, initial connecting, isn't it? So
yeah. Just to be aware, can people see the shared screen that's on at the moment, and also, I guess, our faces? Just to let you know the practicalities of muting microphones, particularly if you're on a laptop without a headset. You can choose whether you can have camera on or off as you feel comfortable, but it's wonderful seeing Julie's balloons and the disappearing water bottle, because the water bottle just vanished there, which is a really weird thing. And I think, given that there's quite a few connecting from home, we shouldn't have the same network issues as if we're connecting via Wi-Fi in the office. And it's lovely to welcome the Karen, Julie, Ailish, and Gurka here so far. And I think there'll be a few more joining us, Gurka, you said. Julie, how did you chance upon those bubbles as your background?
It was the, you know, the little 3 little dots.
Mm-hmm.
Click on there.
Yeah.
Apply background effects. And there's a whole host of, you can be at the beach, in a forest. Oh, you can upload your own.
Yeah. My books are real. Here's Claire. Just joining us.
Hello.
Hi, Claire.
Hiya.
How are you doing today? And Helen joining us as well.
Hi.
Hi, Helen. You are silhouetted. Like wish to kind of hide their identity.
That's me, anonymous.
Anonymous Helen. Ellie's joined us. It's lovely to see Ellie. Hi.
That's not me. Just a minute. Let me close blinds behind me.
Oh, wonderful to see you, Helen.
That's better. I'm out.
It's an odd life where we live our lives on camera, isn't it? Instead of bumping into each other face to face.
It is indeed.
Gurka, how are we doing for the numbers of people? Have we got a few more that we're still expecting?
You know, I checked the latest, but I think also, Pete, maybe at some point, as it's now approaching after, people might just pop in. So to make a start.
Yeah, that's all right. Okay, and Mark Wright is waiting, so I'll let Mark in. So just waiting for Mark to be able to join us. Yep, Mark now. Okay, so welcome everyone. We're here for a conversation about connectedness. This is a project that we started at the in the kind of middle of the last lockdown, around June, July, with a set of conversations with individuals working within the trust about what connectedness meant to us, what the opportunities for connectedness were, and what some of the challenges for connectedness were in these times. So this conversation's expanded as we've gone along, has grown into a blog post online through the Connecting People website that's been wonderful to be a part of, an audio recording. There's a file of the conversation so far, as documented some of people's contributions into that. But the aim today is just to kind of, in the next 55 minutes, just to kind of keep that conversation going. So thinking about what does conversation mean to us, first of all? what are the opportunities for connectedness that we have in these days, aware that Sheffield is on Saturday going into the tier 3 of lockdown, and that some challenges of meeting people outside the home socially kind of increase, and then also what are the options that we have going forward. So it's a conversation, and just a space for us to hear each other, to meet each other. It's been a very rich conversation so far, and we hope to kind of carry on that riches and just share with each other with respect and authenticity and listening. So welcome you to the conversation today. And Gurka is going to be in the conversation as a support and assistant at a few points, kind of reflecting on kind of impressions going through, as well as Gurka being a part of the conversation herself. So I'm just really glad to have Gurka here. It's optional if people want cameras on or off, or as technology allows for people. So just as feels comfortable for you, but it is really meaningful to see faces as well where that's possible. So if anyone would like to kick off, kind of what does connection mean to us? And you might want to use your the hands up feature, and I can see Julie had a hand up, and then Ellie. Julie.
Hi, hello everybody. It's really nice to kind of see people. For those that don't know me, I'm the Director of Allied Health Professions, and I'm an OT by background. So I suppose for me, kind of connectedness and it's kind of fundamental to kind of being a person, never mind in the context in which we're kind of working. And I think for me, there's some of the challenges that have been around in terms of connectedness are sometimes practical ones. So like, can you see people or can you hear people? And kind of like for us, we've been, because I'm based at Fulwood, and we've been thinking about who needs to be at home, who needs to be in, why would you need to be in, why, how to kind of met things up, how to keep connected with people at the same time. And that's been kind of really fundamental to kind of keeping the team ethos kind of going. I also end up chairing a lot of meetings online, which is a real challenge. And that feeling of the connected and saying at a meeting, put your camera on, let's kind of, and at the end put your, let's wave bye-bye to people, then you have your cameras off. So there's something about seeing people as well as hearing people that feels important. But also I was reflecting on this because we had the Arts Festival the other week, and I went to help down at the Moore Market with the exhibition that we had. That, by the way, if anybody wants the exhibition, the pictures are still available on the Sheffield Flourish site. There's some lovely work. But I went down there, and there was a couple of colleagues that I've been kind of meeting with online, and we're talking for a little while, and all of a sudden it was like, it struck me. I've seen them so much online, and I suddenly realised I was seeing them in person. So there's something about how you get so used to this. So, my first thought when I saw them down there wasn't, oh, great, it's lovely to see you, because it feels I've been seeing them anyway. It was a sudden realisation that I was seeing them differently. Yeah, and I think, so there's something, if you're doing a lot of this and you're seeing the same people a lot, how soon you become accustomed to it. But obviously it is weird, and I suppose the key difference in terms of connections with people who you know very well is that when you see them, you might want to give them a hug or have some physical contact, and that's kind of different. So it's been surprising how quickly, from my perspective, I've adapted to this, and how normal it becomes in a strange way, that you almost have to kind of but yeah, I think there's been lots of challenges, and in this last week I came across a cartoon which was really funny about a bit like how Zoom meetings are like a seance. Is anybody there? Can you hear me? Give me an indication. Or another one, there's a wonderful bit I sent round, a colleague across South Yorkshire sent me, where it was, they were in a meeting, but they're pretending they weren't a meeting, and someone was outside the door. I'm locked out. Have you put the keypad in? No, I can't put the key code in. It was very, so there's, yeah, lots of humour as well. So I can put up now.
I think the humour helps us through very much. Yeah. Ellie, you've given me a lot of joy and a lot of laughs through connecting us over these screens in recent months. What does it mean for you to be connected? You're on mute still.
I put my hand down instead of pressing off mute. That's what that's what happened. I got confused. Too many buttons.
And then we'll be Karen after you.
Yeah, no. What Julie was saying about seeing people, like I've seen a lot of people more than I probably would when I was, pre-COVID, because I've seen them on here. But then I do too as well when I meet people in person. And I have this sudden like, oh my God, you're 3D. You've got more than one side to you. Like that's always a bit of a weird one. But yeah, I think I've been like connectedness and connections has been very much on my radar during this time, partially because of my involvement with the Connecting People project and partially because I just think it is for everyone. I don't know. I think it's not actually something that I've really ever thought about before this year in the intensity that I have. I've always known that I need connections. I need people. That I'm a social person that thrives off like interaction, and it kind of gives me energy. But this year it's made it very different for me personally, because I find that doing online and telephone conversations and things like that drains me of energy, but I still need that social interaction. So for me, finding that balance between like the energy that I have and my need for social interaction in this situation that we're in is so much harder to manage than it has been previously. So yeah, I'm having to like prioritize my social interactions, but I have noticed that when I see people, they're much more quality interactions than they would have been previously, and I'm seeing the people that I really want to see, and giving myself a break from my phone or whatever because I'm on it all the time otherwise. So yeah, it's just it's definitely made me think about it with a lot of depth.
That sounds very rich and kind of, I think, adds to the sense, as you say, the depth that are in these conversations. I bumped into Simon Wheatley on a walk in the park this morning, kind of connectedness that happens kind of by accident. We were both on our kind of morning commutes from working from home to working at home, and we had a little discussion about extroversion and introversion. That you've picked up on the idea of where we get our energy from. I naturally think of myself as an extrovert, and kind of one way of understanding that might be that extroverts are people who need to get energy from being around other people in order to be able to be on our own, and introverts are people on that model who need to be on their own in order to have energy to go out towards other people. And I think it's very interesting that what you've just said about that, about where we look for our sources of energy and support. And I know 6 months in, for me, I was saying to Simon this morning, 6 months in, I wonder if I feel as if I've had a reset, that I'm actually learning to kind of use the shadow side almost of that, to actually use my introversion and that being on my own in order to then be able to reach out to others. So that flips around, and we change over time. We're rich people. So Karen,
yeah,
you've had your hand up. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Excuse me.
I was just going to say, I think it's made me realise like how much connection isn't just literally about the words and the conversation. It's about the physical presence of someone as well. That's got a more important aspect than I thought.
Particularly as we're all on screen. Karen.
Yeah, good morning. Again, for those who don't know me, I'm Karen Dickinson. I'm Head of Education and Training. I mean, I suppose my thoughts and experiences are fairly similar, in line with what's been already said. But I think one thing I've reflected on in terms of connectiveness, because my role tends to keep me more at Fulwood, although I do have a regional sort of connection, it's really nice to engage with people that I wouldn't come across normally in my day-to-day work. And I'd reiterate, you know, Julie's sort of comments. It's really important for me to be able to see people, to make that connection. And I know some people should always have choice. And I know some people have, you know, a bit of nervousness about using cameras, but I think we should be encouraging that as much as possible. And for me to meet people, albeit virtually, that I wouldn't normally meet, I think, you know, I'm more likely to perhaps give somebody a call to have a conversation now I've met them than I would otherwise. And I just think it's really helped to support those connections across the organisations, and that helps us to do our jobs better and helps us to understand the perspectives of different roles across the organisation. I also think it's caused some positive influence in meetings as well, where I feel that meetings are much more equitable. You know, some of the meetings that I have to attend, when we used to go and sit in a room, sometimes it was difficult for people to have a voice. And I think this type of forum gives people a more equal opportunity to speak. And I think that's another positive aspect. And I was smiling when Ellie said about the 3D thing, because I think one of the other positives is being able to hide the, don't they call it the COVID stone? So I was sitting, I have a lot of meetings with my team, and I actually went into Fulwood a little while ago, and somebody I work with well said, oh, something, I don't know, he seemed surprised at how I looked. And I think it was due to the fact that most of my COVID stone's on the bottom half of my body, and he couldn't see it when I'm sitting here. You mean I put on weight? So that's another advantage from my point of view. You don't have to worry too much about how tight the dress is. So.
And you know, just to add to this, Karen, it's so funny. I've been very struck how many people now, and including myself, we talk about cake and food. So, you know, the kind of comfort things, which very much links to, and even like people who have started in these times, you know, it's like you actually have only seen a proportion of them. And so it's very different, but yeah. But very interesting, though, to hear, you know, about the really variety with regards to opportunities and challenges that this new medium does bring. This, like our individual preferences, you know, we are all different. So Pete, you were saying about, you know, kind of we all have preferences with regards to where we get our energy from. So, you know, I was quite struck to find out myself, you know, that I'm actually more of an introvert, and being on screen has really kind of confronted me with that a little bit more, but also like kind of linking into what Ellie said about, you know, that actual physical encounter, you know, and the highlighting how language, so yes, there's the word, there's the visual, but actually when we are not actually meeting each other, a lot of cues are missed. So, you know, sometimes that's very nice with regards to the COVID stone. But equally, you know, we know with language, it's actually a lot of the cues that we use, the statistics are above 80%. And, you know, people have varying kind of opinions there, and different research has come up with different figures. But it's actually over 80% of it is nonverbal. But that includes seeing the whole body. And so very different. But equally also, yes, it is an opportunity in that sense. I really, you know, it really chimes, Karen, what you say, that sense of equity. You know, actually hearing more voices, seeing more people from very different levels, and having that opportunity to connect.
I wonder, is there anyone who hasn't had Helen's? There we are. Just options for people to share about what connectedness means to you. It's good that we can hear from each other. Helen.
Yeah, thank you, Pete. Yeah, so I'm just listening to what people are saying, and I agree with what a lot of people are saying. And a lot of my work at the moment is done online with this sort of peer support workers, meeting people. But I think some of that connectedness is lost, and I get what people are seeing, because we're only seeing like the head and shoulders of people, and a lot of the social cues that we would perhaps get otherwise from what people. I mean, you can't what my hands are doing at the moment. They're all over the place. But so yeah, so some of the social cues that we get from body language is missing from this kind of platform. I think that's perhaps what I miss the most, and that actual physical contact with people, kind of thing. And you know, like it's when you're saying bye to people, it's like normally, you know, with friends, I'd say bye, you know, have a hug kind of thing, and you know, I like that physical contact with people, but online it's like bye, and it's a wave kind of thing. It's like just seems a little bit impersonal to me. So, you know, for me, that connectedness is a physical connectedness kind of thing with people.
Thank you. And thinking about what it means to be embodied people is I think comes out as a really important theme from what we're hearing so far. Is anyone who hasn't had a chance to share yet who'd like to say what connectedness means to you? Maybe then thinking about that next question, chance for everybody to be invited. We were just mentioning before about the parity and the hearing everybody's voices equally, and I think that's a really valuable thing that we're already sharing with each other. The opportunities from connectedness. Would anyone like to share what kind of opportunities that they're finding through this period? Maybe new beginnings, things being different and ways forward, just to open up the conversation on the question of what opportunities there are for connectedness. Joe, and then Julie.
Hi, sorry, I've got my camera off. I'll put it on as I speak. Yeah, I think it brings, like you say, opportunities and challenges, doesn't it? What I've noticed actually at things that I've been involved in is that there's been some new faces, and particularly service users. And I know that actually sometimes it creates more challenges. So we know this through the surveys that we've been doing about IT can create anxiety. I mean, I've just done my session now, you know, and think, oh God, I hope it works, you know, and I think I'm okay with IT. So I totally get that. But I have noticed the engagement of new faces and new people who perhaps wouldn't have otherwise been engaged. The fact that they can come on if they want to, they can share their face. If they don't have to. The fact they don't need to leave the house. The fact that it's a click of a button. So where that puts some people off, actually what I've noticed is it's brought new people, and what I would hope is that then it's engaged them. So when we do get past all of this scenario, that, you know, actually there's still this opportunity that if that's the way people choose to engage and that's how they feel safe and comfortable, we can still offer that. Or actually, now we've had this, do you want to go that step further, and do you want to maybe next year's events, you know, for QI Week might be back in a big building again. You know, do you want to get involved in that now they've shown some kind of interest? So I think there's opportunities there in terms of widening the invitation. Again, with this week, the automatic thing for comms was put it on intranet. That's already reducing access to other people, and we're saying it's for service users and carers, etc. And very quickly we had the conversation with comms, and it's all gone out there, and it's the same access for service users, carers, public, anybody. You go on our external website. And that's how you access it. So I think that's an opportunity that perhaps we wouldn't have. I don't know if we'd have done that before, and I don't know why, because it's quite obvious. So yeah, they're kind of my reflections, I think.
Yeah, I'll be mentioning a little bit later the Health and Wellbeing Month that Listening Into Action will be running alongside others in November. And all virtual. But I think, Joe, you pick up a really important issue of kind of access to technology, that sometimes this there's pros and cons with this, that some people are more able to access, particularly people whose health problems or shielding or other things had previously got in the way, that now increases access. But then for other people, that it actually reduces levels of access. And thinking about what that means organizationally, that the kind of people that we see on this screen, faces over and over again, and the groups of people whose faces we don't see, or whose voices we don't hear, because of how their roles impact on them. So thank you for bringing up that really important issue of access. I had Julie to put your hand up.
Hi. Yeah, I think I was reflecting on the opportunities both inside work and outside of work, and I think inside of work it has meant that some of the meetings that I chair have been that are replacing regular meetings have been better attended because people haven't had to travel, haven't had to worry about parking, have been able to get in kind of easily. So there's a lot of people saying we really like this because actually we don't have to think about, traveling half the way across the city to kind of meet up. We can just do it from where we are. People can dip in for part of the time, and it's not such a big issue. So I think there's been better attendance at some of the meetings. I think it's also opportunity, as Jo was saying, to see different people, new faces as well. And I think outside of the work environment, I'm very involved in textile work and the Quilters Guild, and we have an AGM that had to be cancelled. And normally it's a conference, and the AGM is part of the conference. And this year they went to online, and it felt very interactive because you do all the voting by buttons and you could see the thing. But also they had more people for this AGM than they've ever had because people didn't have to pay to travel to go to a conference so. I think going forward, both inside and outside of work, I think going forward, yes, on one level it'd be lovely when we can all meet again, but I think I'd like to see a kind of mixed approach. So there's always the option of dialing in some way, because I think that does allow a greater access. I think it's a challenge depending how you do it, but I think I think it has given other opportunities. So.
And Karen's just added into the chats. It's nice to see chat happening here. That's really nicely on theme about kind of the issues of kind of time and people being able to travel into short meetings, and actually increasing accessibility via the fact that meetings are recorded, so that other people asynchronously can feel part of the conversation. I next had Helen with your hand up there.
Yes, so really, as I think people just said it beforehand, and it's about one of the positives of this is being able to go to meetings and attend different things without having to travel. So, traveling up to Fulwood or traveling to other places from here, it doesn't take long, but, when you think about it, you go for an hour's meeting, it might take 2 hours out of your day to actually do that. So by this kind of thing, online kind of meetings, means that I can do this and then perhaps immediately go into something else, a lot quicker kind of thing. So yes, that's a positive, but I still quite like the face-to-face thing as well.
I think that also really highlights, doesn't it, that on one level, obviously, making time, but also links very much with the learning together, isn't it? Just listening to everybody, what came to mind, so I know for me, this has been a very steep learning curve with regards to IT, operating teams, but also that awareness of, we've all managed, we are here. And actually, there are some positives probably in it for most of us. And thinking also of the context of QI, it's fantastic how we are now able to come together and learn. And actually, many people are empowered.
Yeah, I think as well, it's that allowing to meet new people as well. People I would never ordinarily come across in my day-to-day working. I'm getting to meet and chat with, so that's also a benefit as well to this kind of thing, to find out a little bit about people.
Thank you. And then Ellie, you got your hand up next.
Yeah, I think echo the same thing. I think I've enjoyed collaborating with different people. Like that much easier. And for me, as someone who has no access to my own transport, if I have a meeting at Eastglade and I'm based at Fulwood, that's an hour out my an hour to get there, an hour maybe for the meeting, an hour to get back. That's a whole like morning or afternoon. So it's made me a lot more productive. And as I said in the chat, I don't think I would have attended a meeting before if I had to go late or leave early, because I was too anxious about that whole thing, whereas it's made it a lot more acceptable to do that. I think we haven't had enough chance, probably because of the situation constantly changing, to practice what it would be like fully doing that blended approach where we maybe do have people in the room and people joining virtually. I think that's probably something that still needs to kind of develop, but I'd also like to see like both going ahead. Like I particularly have kind of appreciated is I'm involved in the Disability Staff Network, which has been set up during lockdown, so we've never had a meeting physically before, because it's only been going a couple of months. And actually I think that the way we're communicating now has actually started to we've got like, so for example, we've got Microsoft Teams chat that's going on and people are having some really, really good conversations. And I don't think before we would have had that. We would have had our meeting once every 2 months or whatever, and then not talked again until the next. People have said that they've really just appreciated that presence of it. And I feel that like we have more of a presence of it because of being able to do it virtually.
Thank you so much. I just note from an option that Teams gives me to be able to see see who's in the room, and it's really nice to see people joining the meeting. Some of the people have had to leave owing to time commitments, and there's something about a flexibility of conversation that's going on, and the chance for people being able to opt in and opt out as the need gives, and to opt back in or communicate via other means. So it's really interesting, and I can see that Joe's got your hand raised, and it's been really nice to hear from you.
Thank you, Pete. Yeah, it was just picking up on that really. It's interesting, isn't it? Because when there's chat going on the side like this, it feels really like people are engaged, and it's great that this is all happening. If I was in a room and people were whispering to each other, I'd find it quite rude. I'll be honest, and I'd feel like, well, there's a conversation going off there, but I'm talking, or someone else is talking, and that's a bit. And I think it brings that different kind of, and also people coming and going. If there were people in and out the room, we'd constantly be going, oh right, oh, and I'm not judging that whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm saying it's like you've just said, really, it's a different opportunity, isn't it? I certainly look at it very differently. I find the chats on the side quite helpful. I'm still engaged. I'm still listening to you. And I find it perhaps it makes me feel like, oh, people are engaged because they're having a chit chat on here as well. I wouldn't feel that if I was in the room. Yeah. If I was in a room and people are having a conversation, I'd be thinking I'm being quite blunt with this, but I'd be thinking, am I boring people, or why? Or just something is happening on the side. So I think it's really interesting how we adapt the way our brains think, or perhaps I'm not adapting, it's just what's happening in here, that actually I'm feeling quite differently when it's online than if this was happening in a room. Also with the, with the hands up stuff, I think we've now quite got used to that. I don't think we did at first, it was a nightmare, I think, but they actually were quite polite. Again, in the room, I know I would be wanting to probably, whereas I sit with my hand up and wait for you to say. So I'm finding it quite interesting, actually, the way that we're all adapting to this style of meeting.
Yeah, and politeness is a really important thing that we give to each other. I see, Karen, you've got your hand up, and it's again really nice that we're including each person.
Yeah, and I think just following up from what Joe's saying around that comparison between a face-to-face meeting and an online meeting, I think one of the most difficult things with face-to-face meetings, if you're chairing it and you're talking to a sort of screen full of round circles with initials on and nobody speaks. And, I think this is why, in the same way as I don't think you'd ever have a meeting in a real situation where nobody sort of made eye contact at least and probably spoke. I think we all have a bit of a responsibility to engage in some way in online meetings in the same way as we would, you know, and I mean, I take into account people's preferences, and not everybody speaks in a meeting, but this model allows you to engage without actually having to say anything. But I think it's about showing up, isn't it, and being part of it. But it's an interesting comparison between the two different sorts of ways of communicating.
I'm just also, you know, kind of listening about, you know, the different contexts and, you know, how maybe ground rules shift, or likes and dislikes. I do wonder though also of the, so Pete, you mentioned earlier, the well-being, and that's really something that does pop up for me, because that real balance, isn't it? We now have the opportunity just pop in and out, but also that balance. So, you know, Julie, you were talking about, so on screen for personal, you know, but really also making that time for stopping, or even going and getting a cup of tea and not feeling guilty. And even just at the point of booking team meetings in, you kind of now look at your diary and say, oh, I can go to this, and actually forget, usually I would walk from this meeting to this meeting, or maybe just even have anybody who wants a cup of tea, I'll make a round of drinks, you know, and all these things have dropped. But the importance of actually stopping and thinking, hold on, have I had a break? Have I had my breakfast? Do I need a walk?
Ellie, used to seeing you on videos of roller skates. Physical activity is obviously very important to you in this. What's your take so far?
Yeah, no, I agree with Gurka. You kind of get a bit carried away, don't you? Because you can just, like, some days my calendar's just like full of blocks and there's no spaces in between, and I'm like rushing to the loo in between, and you just never would dream of doing that before. And I guess I'm fortunate in that I am coming to the workplace, so I'm making that my physical activity. I'm using my bike or roller skates to get here, so I have that, which is really, really helpful. But I think I would be, if I was working from home, I think that would be something that I'd be struggling to make time for, which I really need to do in terms of well-being. So I think that's, yeah, it's something that I think we're aware of, but it's easy to get carried away with. I also just sort of like had a thought, because I always really enjoyed like the QI events. I've always really enjoyed them, and so I was kind of disappointed when it had to be cancelled, and glad that it was happening as a virtual week. But I think the thing that I'm still like missing, and you'll never ever be able to get virtually, is that networking, is that like moving around and having a chat with someone when you're in a queue or by the coffee stand or whatever, and that's something that's really missing, just that peripheral conversation that you don't get here. Yeah.
That's really interesting, kind of recognizing the spaces around the conversations, that we have our focus time on the conversation, but we have the kind of the gentle bleed into conversations as people arrive into a meeting, how we kind of checking in with each other, and then how meetings finish. Julie's just put in a very insightful question about the challenge of if we end up scheduling meeting back to back with every meeting starting or finishing on the hour, then we don't actually give ourselves time for a break. We specifically shortened this session in order to make sure there was a break between what went before and what will come after. I wonder if we've kind of moved through a set of opportunities, and we're starting to pick out some of the challenges now. I wonder if people would like to share on some of the challenges to connectedness that this either this way of working or this period of that we're living through poses to connectedness, and particularly invite anyone who hasn't shared yet. You're very welcome to input into the conversation, but thanking everybody for the quality of listening that there is as well.
You know, I wonder, just maybe to start things off, I think, Karen, you said earlier that notion of being on a screen, but actually only seeing blobs. And but also kind of, so, you know, I found that really challenging when you enter a meeting and then they're blobs. And then I'm kind of asking myself, okay, is the the kind of context of this meeting, have people decided this is not happening? And I've actually then posed that question. Could I just ask, are we putting cameras on? Are people not able to? Because I'm aware in Fullwood sometimes that's hard. Being a real challenge and kind of really bringing together there that, you know, I like to see people. It makes it so much more human. I find it extremely hard when you are in a meeting, especially I think if you also facilitate a meeting, to gauge where people are at, but equally then to acknowledge some people find it really challenging to be on the screen. So to bring these different factors together, and I wonder how other people, you know, have managed that, experienced that.
So we had Joe and then Helen and then Ailish. Joe.
Okay. Yeah, so picking up on what Gurka said, really. I think, yeah, so I've just done a session now, 9:30 till 10:30, and a lot of people throughout the discussion didn't put the cameras on. And I totally agree, you know, it is hard when you're looking at it thinking, oh, you know, are people listening or whatever. However, I'm conscious I'm putting mine on and off today because I've got a cracking headache, I'll be honest with you. I'm listening, but I don't really want you to see me sat like this, you know. I'll put my camera up. I mean, Claire, it doesn't really matter in this group. I feel quite safe saying that, but I think having that option to still be part of it, but in a relaxed way, rather than me feeling the pressure of I've got to sit straight and I've got to be like this. Actually, the fact I can put it on when I'm talking, you know, but I can turn my camera off. And I know there are people, so I'd hate that to come across. It's interesting actually how people read. I'd hate that to come across that, oh, well, why, you know, I've just explained now. But if I was in a big wide forum, I probably wouldn't explain that. I would just put my camera off and sit and listen. And also, I think the other thing is not everybody has the technology to put the camera on. I know I've certainly been in meetings where they don't have the tech, and like I'd hate people to feel that oh, if I've not got a camera, I'm not part of it, you know. So there's again, there's the mixed options, isn't there? Because I think it is. I was on a meeting last night. I don't know if anybody here was, and Jan there were loads of people, and I think one person had the camera on, and then Jan kind of said, you can put your camera on, and I put mine on for a bit because I said to her, you know, yeah, it's awful. You've got 60 odd people on this call and nobody is there even giving you a nod, you know, and it's quite nice just having that little bit of, oh, there is a human on the other side of this screen. So yeah, so I think it's again, the kind of the mixed emotion really, isn't it? About, and also it's from a challenging perspective. Like I said, I have got a bit of a headache now. It for your own health and well-being. I mean, I you know, can look at my number of steps I've taken, absolutely minimal, because I've walked downstairs, I've sat here, I've been on screen all day, and I'll walk upstairs or around, you know, and it's not very healthy. Whereas at least I'd get in my car and I'd drive around, or I'd go up and down those steps at Fullwood to different meeting rooms, you know. So that for me though is not a thing. It's just a challenge that I know I need to pick up myself and do something about. I don't think it should be an only, but you know. So yeah, lots of pros and cons, I think. So sorry, I'm putting my camera back off again.
and some powerful words you've used, Joe, there around kind of emotions, around safety, this whole area is like kind of psychological safety and how we communicate belonging and inclusion is just really, really important. I've got Helen and then Ailish next.
Yeah, so I just wanted to pick up on this whole camera theme, really. And I think for me, it depends on where I'm working from. So, for instance, like here, I'm in clinic, and the bandwidth is reasonably okay. So yes, I'm able to put my camera on. But then other times when I might be working from home, where you know the bandwidth might not be particularly good, I'll switch my camera off, just so I can listen to what's being said. And it's not that, you know, I'm being rude, it's because I'm interested and engaged. But you know, I want to hear what's being going on. But when you're constantly losing signal, I'm missing perhaps important pieces of information. So to try and improve that, I will turn the camera off just to do that. And you know, even when perhaps, you know, I'm in let's say a real life meeting, sometimes I'm not even looking round. I might be looking down or something like that. But I'm listening, so I'm actively listening to what people are saying. So it's kind of similar to that. And just on a little side note, I'm thinking when we do get back to real life meetings, I think I might just have a printout of my initials on the white circle that I can put up in front of my face, and a little hand that I can put up.
Helen, it's absolutely wonderful to have your sense of humour in so many of these meetings. So you're one of the many faces and one of many voices that have kept me going through this time. It's such an encouragement. Ailish.
Yeah, well, first I wanted to pick up on that kind of engagement thing of the black blobs. I find it really hard. One, if I'm presenting or facilitating something, there is those black blobs. But again, if I'm not got my camera on, often I find it harder to engage in the meeting. I'll get distracted more easily. I might just go and check my emails quickly, and then I think I worry if I've got black blobs in front of me. Are they? Yeah. Well, without the camera there, you could be quite easily doing that. Yeah. Get distracted by something else, and I think the engagement in the meeting reduces if you haven't got your cameras on, which we can't all have them on, but I know that mine does, and I always worry when I'm doing something that are people listening properly, are people engaged properly, or have they got distracted doing their emails and things. And the second thing was around the mix. So the mix of the virtual and them being in the room. So I've got some meetings where you can sometimes suddenly feel a bit of an outsider being the one that's the virtual, because there's people in a room and you're kind of like a computer box trying to join in. And that can be difficult sometimes, how you join in. If there's more, if the majority is flipped, that there's more people in the room than virtual, it feels like you're sort of a bit of an outsider to a meeting rather than part of the meeting when it's like this and it's all equal, that we're all virtual. Definitely felt feelings of being a bit of an outsider.
Powerful feelings.
Really interesting point there, isn't it? That actual, we talk about the opportunities, challenges, comparing, but actually when the two come together, what that poses, and how people can feel, quite disengaged as well, because it makes it quite difficult bringing them two together. Saying that, maybe parts work as well, but yeah, really interesting point. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Karen next.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very mindful that we're talking a lot about cameras, and most of the people who talk about cameras have got their cameras on, and we've got a number of people who are not using cameras. So first of all, I'd want to say, certainly from my perspective, and I'm sure the whole group, this isn't a criticism. I wouldn't want people to sit there and think because they're choosing not to turn the camera on, they're being criticised in any way. I think it's important for me to say that, and also to encourage them to give some feedback in terms of their perspective, whether it's in the chat or without their cameras on. It'd be really useful to hear, how they're feeling and why they're choosing not to turn them on. It could be a technical issue, it could be a whole range of things, but particularly I want to stress we're not criticising, or I'm not criticising, I'm sure nobody else is.
And Karen Finch Civico, you just put your hand up.
Hi, yeah, I'm just responding to what Karen's just said. I'm coming into the Longley Centre later for a meeting, but currently, because I came downstairs and just sat in front of my computer, I look like I've been set on fire and put out with a shovel, and you do not want to see this. I've not done my hair or my face or anything, and I'm not necessarily vain, but it's bad today. That's why my camera isn't on.
Thank you. But I think that there is the question that looking around, often kind of whether we're in person or on screen like this, the question about who's not at the table is a really important thing. Kind of what identities are not present at the table. So generally, looking around, from what I've seen on camera on screen, we are fairly homogeneously white. I'm in a minority by being male. In this, I understand that in the trust also that's kind of about right. We're about 75% female within the trust. So kind of how are we representing the diversity, and what are the kind of challenges and potentially opportunities for kind of expanding coronavirus is something that doesn't hit everybody equally, perhaps more likely to hit men, perhaps more likely to hit people from Black and minority ethnic backgrounds. How does this way of communicating and living our lives, where we're almost all female and almost all white, how does that map on, and how do we work towards greater equality? I wonder if anyone's any thoughts about inclusion and diversity.
You know, one thing that comes to mind, Pete, is you know, the sense of assumptions. You know, it's that thing of you know, it's a really interesting point you're making with regards to inclusivity and equity and involving people. But the important thing is to ask people, you know, how we can do it and how it can work for people, because trying to guess is a hard thing to do, and often I find it doesn't work, you know, because we are all different, you know, just very dependent. We are all individual people, whether white, whether black, whether of a different sexual orientation, you know, we will all, and even, you know, within those categories, if I want to use that word, the differences are great as well. That makes us
absolutely
such varied and wonderful people. And I guess the thing is to ask and not make assumptions.
And I think my purpose was to kind of raise it as a question that I asked it as kind of two binaries of that question, hoping that this would kind of increase the conversation around diversity. Helen.
Yeah, so you know, I'm an openly trans person, so yes, I'm here, so I'm a little bit different. Quite happy to be different. But I think, you know, the whole question of about how do we include you know, perhaps minority community in these kind of conversations is, I don't think it's ours to answer that question. I think we need, you know, like with Gurk, I agree with Gurk, that we need to be asking the people who are not here, what's prevented you from coming to this? Is it a technological issue? Is it, you know, they don't feel part of it? Is, you know, what's the issues? Like I say, it's not for me as a white female to be able to answer that. I can't answer that. I think, you know, I've seen, you know, obviously a lot of things been going on around the Black Lives Matter issues and the big conversations and that's been happening recently within the trust. And I have to say the predominantly amount of people that I've seen who have been contributing to that conversation have been white people. I've heard very little from the BAME community about that and their thoughts on that. And, you know, I'm not particularly interested in what white people think as such. I want to know what you know, the community themselves think about that. You know, and hear their perspective. I think there's something very, very powerful about a lived person's perspective on this, and that's something that I've perhaps not heard from that kind of thing. So, you know, I've seen it. I've not engaged with it myself because you know, I don't feel as though I've got a right to engage with that. It's not. I'm not kind of like part of that community. And that's not what I want to hear. I want to hear that powerful voice from the person themselves.
Really interesting point there, Helen. You know, I was invited to the BAME, you know, group, and just because I'm, you know, German, I'm different in that sense, and I always felt a little bit. I remember going to a meeting, you know, still when we were able to, and I felt, should I really be here? You know, but equally, you know, having now, I've been taking part in the big conversation, and actually there is a lot of conversation going on, and it's really good to be part of. I'm personally, you know, it is quite hard actually to really take actively part there, you know, because I am listening, but also I think a conversation between, you know, different groups is encouraged, because that will bring us forward in, you know, really exchanging reflections, understanding, you know, each other's views, or, you know, how we approach a situation better. But it's a hard one, you know, it's challenging, but I think it's been good to be part of the big conversation. And I do wonder whether other people have been and what their reflections from that are. But I felt a connection is happening, and exploration is taking place, which is great and gives me hope.
I heard a helpful definition of the difference between inclusion, diversity, and inclusion. The diversity is recognizing a place at the table. Equality, if you like, is recognizing that we're equal around the table. But inclusion is having a voice at the table, and it's so valuable to be hearing so many different perspectives. And yes, compared to my deliberately binary question before, the diversity of people that we are, whether visible or hidden, identities by lived experience of disability, by lived experience of mental health recovery, and our ongoing journeys with mental health, our diversity of faith or not having faith. There's so much diversity and richness there. We're coming up to 5-2. Just a chance kind of for people to kind of feedback on your kind of experience of this conversation. It's been wonderful hearing people's reflections, and particularly having the chats up on the side, people's contributions to that. But I wonder some kind of reflections on kind of what the process has been like for you, so we can keep on learning from this conversation. Anyone like to kick us off with some reflections?
Well, I'll make a start. I just kind of really wanted to say thank you, because I think these sessions, you know, where we come together and it's a conversation, it's maybe can sometimes be a little bit more challenging, you know, that sense of not having a kind of preprint, so to speak, that we speak to. But I also would just really like to thank everybody for their reflections, their thoughtfulness, their compassions, and just their contributions in terms of, you know, we are talking opportunities, challenges, and it's as well as kind of, you know, in our professional context, it's very personal, isn't it? Because it is about our very individual preferences and kind of real challenges that we may experience as part of this time, as part of, you know, this very different context of being on screen, and kind of fulfilling our roles, but also, you know, living our lives now in a very different way, and that is professionally and personal.
Thanks, Kika. Karen?
Yeah, I've just put something similar in the chat. I just think I've just been reflecting on the fact that most people's experience has been really positive, despite the really, really difficult circumstances we've been working in. We've managed to get quite a lot of good out of it. And I just think that's quite a cheery thing to reflect on. It's been forced on us, but actually there's been quite a lot of positive impact for people.
Thank you. Esther's just put in that it's been good to listen to the conversation, and thanks to everyone. Sat at a PC at Eastglade with no access to the camera. I think kind of there's lots of learning that we're going to be taking away from these conversations, and kind of how do we go forward as an organisation. Just a couple of minutes left. Does anyone would like to say something that hasn't? I'm just really, really grateful for people's sharing today.
No, thank you, Pete, for facilitating.
I think Helen's got the last word for us to take us up to midday.
Yeah, so I just wanted to reiterate what Karen said and thank you for facilitating today, Peter. It's been a really interesting session to openly talk with other people and be connected. Well, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. So we've got a couple of opportunities coming up that I'll leave on the screen as we finish. The Health and Wellbeing Month coming up in November. There'll be lots more opportunities for conversations like this to happen, and also there's one more space on the Coffee and Connections conversation program that's going on. Someone who's part of developing the New Insight program has asked if somebody would be willing to pair with them to share a coffee sometime. So if anyone from this conversation would like to do that to pair with another person from the Insight Refresh team, then please let me know afterwards and we can get that sorted out. But it said there are ears that have the power to open mouths, Grace Holworth, and I think today ours have been those ears that have given each other today the permission to share honestly from where we are and as who we are. And I'm very, very grateful for people's listening and for people's sharing, and it's great to know that we're in this journey together. And thank you to Gurka for your help.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Hugs, virtual hugs.